Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Just walk out for a second if you lose. What happens? You lose in Sweet 16? You're upset? Maybe a little bit embarrassed? What's that going to do? Make you work harder? Make you get better? That's the worst that can happen tonight. So you can do that, or you can go make history for a great school. Hold that in front of your mind. Go make history. Don't try to just win the game. Go take the game.
They'll dribble out the clock. Might have ourselves an interesting Sunday afternoon game.
The Creighton Blue Jays fly into the Elite Eight. First time in school history. Ledee missing on the free throw. It's tracked down by a rope, but he saves it, and he goes over the scores table in the process.
Doesn't take long to get back.
Ledee gets fouled by Alexander. Trammell. Wow. Out of nowhere, Kalkbrenner spikes it. We were that close to a tie game, and San Diego State will have possession.
Such a great judgment, too, by Alexander. I don't know how that ball didn't go in.
And meanwhile, San Diego State has a 1-point lead trying to get to the finish line.
They were so close, and we all watched it neutrally. It felt anticlimactic for them. Those guys, they're still waiting to find out whose ball it was going to be and how much time was left on the clock. And then all of a sudden, the season's over.
Yeah, well, that's how this tournament is, and it's so hard. You know, just that one play is the difference in the whole game. And I know everyone says, well, if they could have shot the ball better, but I don't go for that stuff. Listen, it's the crushing emotions of March.
Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, Monday morning, 590 ESPN Omaha. Live on Twitter, live on YouTube. And sitting next to my guy, Damon Benning from Hail Varsity Club. Welcome to the show. We're happy to have you with us this week. A major weekend in sports, and it all revolved around the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight for the most part when it came to actual game play. But on the other side, things were still taking place down in Lincoln this weekend, a big recruiting weekend down there, and we will get all of our thoughts in on that. But before we do that, DB, good morning.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm feeling good, refreshed after the weekend. My body feels good, but my head may not be so right after watching college basketball yesterday.
Yeah, it was wild. There's a lot going on, man. A lot going on all weekend. We're together with Ravi on Friday. Then Saturday was a long day. Got to see some good basketball. Yesterday was exciting. I wondered if Sunday would be at the top Saturday in terms of drama. I mean, because lost in the whole Creighton, controversy, if you will. Miami's comeback,
wild,
and Larnaga
slept on,
just taking another team in a year in which it was just as offbeat, off-brand with what's in the Final Four. I mean, there was a lot going on in the sports world. So.
I could not have been more wrong about Miami this year in the tournament. I could not be more wrong. Fade me.
I felt like I had to talk. Well, it's not just you. I mean, I just think unless you watch the ACC, you don't because a lot of their metrics you don't love them, but it's what I would always say about them. Whether I'm talking to you or Brian Edwards, I remember we had who agreed with us? Shane CJ agreed with us, right? No, CL.
CL Brown, yeah.
CL Brown. He's like, I'm with you. Miami, I felt like Duke was playing the best, but Miami was really good because it's just hard to match their energy. And man, they're fearless. They don't give a what. It doesn't matter what the score is at any time in a game. They're trying to give it to you. So I didn't see this. I didn't see them
going to the Final Four.
But I did. I mean, that's a good basketball team.
I don't know if anybody saw these Final Four teams outside of UConn.
And they're getting too many next weekend. 5.5 is too many
For UConn?
Yeah.
Man, the way that they've played the last 2 games, though, it makes sense.
Oh, I get it. I understand. It's just you're going to give them a week off. Hurley's going to get in his own head. I feel like I have a good pulse now with these teams and kind of how they're playing. You know, I think if Creighton took some truth serum, I think they probably would have, and I said this, would have rather seen Bama than San Diego State. San Diego State is just, we said it since the matchup when they had Bama. It's a big, strong, mature, grimy team.
It plays deep.
It's just grimy. They got those weird body types. They don't really look like hoopers. And then they're just tenacious. And they've won 15 out of 16. So they're playing well at the right time.
Yeah, you know, that is something that I missed, that I overlooked, how often they were winning down the stretch. And it didn't start off strong for SDSU this year. But
yeah,
I liked hot teams coming into the tournament, and that one just slipped away. And I think it slipped away, too, because they played Charleston right off the bat. And I liked Charleston coming in, and that was one of those 5-12 upsets that I could have seen. But for the most part, I actually didn't like or hate the draw. I thought Creighton's best chance at moving on was playing SDSU. And if you just really think about the tournament as a whole for Creighton, as much as people are probably still hurting after last night's loss, or yesterday afternoon's loss, I should say, this was like the year they had the draw. If you looked back at everything that happened, whether it was, hey, we started with the preseason expectations, and then you get to the tournament and you go from being a 6 to then playing a 3 in Baylor, which people thought, I don't know, like really good guard play there. That didn't hold up. Then you play a 15 and you're like, wow, okay, we see a 5 beat the 1 in the Elite 8 or in the Sweet 16 on the other side to go to the Elite 8. Now you have a 5-6 matchup. And then if that goes your way, you're playing a 9 in the Final Four. Nothing to take away from FAU, but you're still playing a 9 in the Final Four.
I think it's weird how people say that. I heard this a lot. I don't. How do we say not to take anything away? But like, if we're getting into the seed lines and where they are, you're taking something away, right? Because if it didn't have anything to do with how they were seeded, we would just talk about how they were playing. So, and I just was listening. Who's the guard, nutty guard that had the issue with Apple long time ago. Okie State. Come on, DB.
Find it.
He's good on Twitter. Fills in for Colin Cowherd sometimes.
Oh,
Okie State.
I don't watch the Herd.
No, it wasn't Apple. Was it Apple? Or was that Rex Chapman? It wasn't Rex Chapman. It's
Help us out in the comments.
Are you serious right now? How am I drawing a blank on who this is? Anyway, like hey, not to take anything away, but the path, and I'm like, but you are though, right? Because I just think, and I think this is the former player in me, but not near as much as it is the coach. Doug Gottlieb, thank you. That's my man, Degenerate Aaron, Doug Gottlieb.
Thank you.
At this stage of the tournament, it is what it is. If all these other teams are getting beat, there is no favorable draw. Like, that's just how I feel about it. Like, and I get it, right? If you could step back out and you could say, oh, man, would I rather play this team or this team? Well, I obviously want to play the higher seeds. But all year, I felt like, weren't we talking about how good luck seeding 3 through 11? Razor thin between 4s through 8s. But then once we get here and we actually look at the numbers, then it's like, oh man, it was, favorable. I mean, and I guess, But after 2 weeks of playing basketball, the good teams are still playing.
And I'm for that. I'm for that point, but there's still a case to be made for if I was playing a 1 or a 2. If I was playing Marquette in the Final Four, I'd be a little more nervous than playing FAU.
Yeah.
Because you're just talking about a better conference now and a better team.
Yeah, well, I guess once I see Purdue lose, I'm not looking at the seeds. I'm just not, right? Because what has it been all tournament? It's been about matchups. Creighton could play San Diego State. You have to see a team like San Diego State a couple of different times to figure out what it's like to get pushed and touched and clutched and grabbed. You have to see Creighton a little bit to figure out what the space is and how you have to guard guys at like 25 feet. You have to play against Wong once or twice or Pack to see, golly, in space, man, you give a little soft shoulder. UConn had it to do over again. They wouldn't have been celebrating near as much about the 12-minute mark. Right. So I just think there's just something about my spirit where I'm just like, and maybe it's because I was part of a 17-point underdog, and so I'm kind of jaded, right? Like it's personal, but I also know I just watched in the state playoffs for football. It's hard out here. It's hard.
Well, in basketball's that sport too.
It's hard. It's hard.
Inconsistency flourishes.
Yeah.
Because anything can happen. It's a game of runs. So if you go on an 8-0 run, all of a sudden you're like, I don't know. It's how Purdue lost, right?
Yeah, it's hard.
It's how FDU got that win. So basketball is that one sport to where I'm with you, where you don't really want to pay attention to the seeds. You want to pay attention to how hot a team is. But if I'm looking toward the final picture, if I didn't have to play Bama, or if I didn't have to play Houston, or if I didn't have to play UCLA, or if I didn't have to play Arizona, that makes me feel better, warm and fuzzy, versus if I had to play, Princeton out of nowhere. And I had to play whatever other 13, 11, whatever it is.
I do strap them to the chair a little, it's usually always blue in the movies, the True Serum. Like you give Coach Mack a little True Serum. Hey, who would you really rather play? You like the matchup against Bama, young team, talented but young,
really talented.
Or the Grammy Grinders. He may like his matchup against young talent. Maybe he liked the coaching matchup better. You just what I'm saying is I don't know. I typically don't get into that. But listen, I'm open for it. 888-638-4876. You can always email us. I'm Damon at Hurrdat. You're Andrew at Hurrdat. There's always Twitter, and then there's our comment section says we're representing from H&H Chevrolet Studios. I don't know, man. Now you got me kind of.
Well, you have me thinking too when you brought up the Coach Mack part at the end, because now I'm thinking, man, if I am Coach Mack, do I feel better about how we shape up against a young team versus a grinding team?
Trust me, like we think about it at the end of the day, like if you're just like super machismo and you're out here being fake, I don't care who we play. Right, like, and there's some of that. There is, but
it comes. I care about who I play.
There's some of that, right? Yeah. But I think as a staff, and it's been that way for years on any of these staffs. Hey, we feel better going against them. We like the coaching matchup better against them. Well, the way they like to play, you know what I mean? It's like, trust me. Bellevue West is not better than North Platte, but I'd rather play Bellevue West than I would North Platte. Just because of the moments, just because of the way that they play, right? It just was not a good matchup. It's not a good matchup,
right?
So it's like, I think we can say that without me saying, oh man, because Bellevue West they're sensational, right?
Yeah.
But
that's what I was going to say. Sometimes too, I'd roll the dice.
Yeah.
Right. I'd rather roll the dice probably to play North Platte than I would Bellevue West, just because I could probably bet on something going wrong for North Platte more than I could on Bellevue West. But at the same time, I understand your point where You don't want to play for that. You want to have a plan going in.
No, I won't guarantee it. I would get the sense if you ask the players. Now, this is different than Coach Simons or somebody. They probably would prefer, given the choice, they probably would rather play Millard North than Papio South. For whatever the reason, right? I think they just like that matchup better. But on paper, I mean, you're talking about a team that was the state runner-ups. So I'm always, every time people say, and I'm really surprised when former players say it, because I think they've turned to media, because it's just too
going
easy.
Back to the seeds.
Yeah, it's just too easy to look at seed lines when all year, it sounds like double talk, because all year we talked about how hard it was going to be to seed. Oh, is this going to be the year for the madness? And then it actually happens, and we're like, oh, man, if it only would have just gone to seed, if only it just would have gone to chalk. You know what I mean? I don't know.
That's a good point, because we did talk about how wide open this field was and not really knowing who the true one was. Although going into the tournament, I think we all felt comfortable with Bama, the way that they were playing. Well, it was either that or Houston. And then when you saw Houston lose to Memphis, it was like okay, so now it's not that. And UCLA wasn't playing good enough to be a 1 according to people, even though they probably should have been the 1 over Purdue. Mm-hmm. And KU was that team all season that you were like, do they have enough pieces to really go back to back?
You know, it was funny. And it's a team like that, right? Where it was like, people didn't love Kansas's roster, but you know what they always pointed to? Quad 1 wins. I'm like, well, you're going to get a chance at more quad 1 wins in that conference. And so if you can hold serve, like I could see it. That's why
Iowa State had so many quad 1 wins too, though.
You know, it's just opportunities to do so don't always make it so, if that makes sense. I get a lot of shots at quad 1 opportunities when I play in a conference like that. Not to discount quad 1 wins, but man, it's an unbelievable weekend. And I felt like, and I said this to Ravi on Friday when we were sitting there, there were these weird stretches for Creighton where I just felt like Princeton was scoring too easy. Mm-hmm. And early on yesterday, I felt like San Diego State was scoring too easy. Watch that team. It's not a good offensive team. But then as the game wore on, then you saw the droughts. They'd go 4 minutes without a field goal. They'd go 3 and some change without scoring a basket.
But I still think they got the better looks. Creighton was not getting any look that they liked because SDSU was on them like glue. They couldn't get the ball inside to Kalkbrenner. They were, for the majority of the time, running around with the ball around the perimeter, trying to find their way into the paint. And even when they did, their help side defense wasn't needed. So on-ball guarding got to the spot before Creighton could.
So I had to think about this. I gave it like 15 minutes, right? Because I've been there. I know. I had some questions immediately after the game. But I waited to text Nick just because, listen, that's your alma mater.
There's attachment there.
Yeah, and it's emotional, right? And I'm never going to be one of those guys. And I always used to say this on Twitter, like, I don't know why people get at other people when their teams lose. Like, I'll never be that dude. But anyway, so I just wanted to wait. But I had 2 questions immediately, and I'll give you the one shock. My shock was after I got done listening to CBS, I went and looked at the box score. I was shocked. Creighton only turned the ball over 10 times. Watching that game real time, I would have guessed 16 or 17 turnovers because the offense was just what you said. It's kind of messy, and they always seem disjointed. Like they're another 5 seconds away from turning the ball over versus getting a shot off. So I thought 10. I was like, oh God, I wouldn't have come within 5 or 6 if you'd asked me to guess. The other thing was, and I asked him, I can't remember how I worded it because I wanted to be sensitive. And I said, hey, not trying to be that guy, but I do have a question. What do you think about Because immediately when they had the take foul, and I wouldn't have thought of it if I wasn't listening to the broadcast, because for 30 minutes of that game, I was listening to the radio broadcast because I thought it would be pretty fun to hear Nick get to kind of just be a fan, right? I mean, he's
always on national television.
Yeah, and he has to be objective. And I know what it's like when you get to do a broadcast, you kind of get to cheer. So he was. So I'm like, you know what? I had Alexa rolling, right? About the last 10 minutes, I went back to the television just because I was starting to get food ready, and I was concerned that something was going to happen to my man John Bishop. So I didn't want. My man said, "Grab the ball, grab the ball," because Creighton was kind of fumbling with one-handed rebounds, and I was like, "Ooh!" Like
he touched it.
I felt like I'm like, let me go back to the TV for a minute because you start feeling for your friends, right?
Right.
So when they got to the sequence of the take foul, they walked us through it with about 29 seconds to go. And there was a timeout. We started talking about the take foul, and if you wait too long, so it was fresh in my mind. But I didn't hear anybody talk about it after the game. I'm like, why use the take foul with 7 seconds with the shot clock where it was, as opposed to just waiting another 3 or 4 seconds and then
something
foul.
I didn't understand.
And the only other person and I'm sure other people were talking about it, but it was an official that asked me on Twitter. He just casually said, because I was going through all these other things on Twitter, and he just casually said, "Hey, you know what? I didn't understand when they used the take foul." And I was like, man, swear to goodness, I asked Bob that a while ago just to see what he thought. So those were outside of that, I mean, you got to shoot the ball better. I think the offensive rebounds were crazy. I didn't love their shot selection, but maybe that was what they could get. And I'm
a lot of it seemed forced though, because the shot clock was winding down.
And you know how I feel, man. I didn't have any problems with the foul call.
And and we'll get into that in the next segment, and probably in the early stretch of the hour. But I will say this too. Somebody that stepped up in a big way that I was surprised that he stepped up big in the moments where I thought Creighton needed somebody was Arthur Kaluma.
Yeah.
And this is somebody that I've never really fonded over this year. I don't like when he puts the ball on the ground, and there were times in this game where I'm like, this is why you don't dribble the basketball. But more times than not, I'm like, Kaluma's the reason Creighton is still alive right now, that they're getting 2 points here or there to just stick around with SDSU. Nobody else was scoring. Nobody else was finishing. But then you give the ball to Kaluma, and he had the mismatch.
Yeah.
He used his size in order to get buckets, essentially. Was he playing with a little extra firepower because his brother was on the other side? Probably. He had some extra motivation there to not be the one to go home. But I have to give credit to Kaluma, because as much as I've been hard on him this year, he was the reason they stuck around in that game.
As we set the lineup, we'll talk to, I think Sam's up
Sam
first.
at 8.
We'll talk recruiting weekend and get all of that. We've got Matt DeMarinis, who I asked, could a guy that was supposed to be the surefire NBA pick to start the season be the X Factor in March Madness, which was Art Kaluma?
And the follow-up point there.
And we'll talk to Brady Oltmans to cap what happened.
We'll continue the conversation with Creighton next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, Coach, you made the point to us, there's no knocking out San Diego State with one punch, but how do you hold them off here in the second half?
Well, we're going to have to keep punching. They got a few offensive rebounds that last 5 or 6 minutes, and then we didn't probably establish Kalkbrenner as well as we did early in the game, and I think we're going to have to get back to that.
You win with class, you lose with class. That has been the motto.
He's the man.
The motto this year out of Coach Mac's mouth. And that trickled down to the team. And that's how the team responded after yesterday afternoon's loss to SDSU in the Elite Eight. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. Should we do it? Should we go to the play everyone's been talking about?
Shane Schillerberg over there on the ones and twos.
The graphic on every TV screen over the last 12 to 14 hours has been controversial call when thinking SDSU Creighton's ending. I'm looking at it right now on Get Up on the TVs here at Hail Varsity Club. And I have 4 thoughts on this, DB, and I'll go through all 4, and then I want to give I want you to just react however you wish, because you know how I feel.
At the end or one, then at the end?
You can react. Just butt in, actually. I'll just have you butt in whenever. But because you know how I feel with officiating. I think to some degree, and I thought the roundtable discussion, the panel after the game
I watched
yesterday,
I watched it 15 times.
I thought it was really good. Really telling, too, how even guys that played the sport can think like a fan more than they can think about the moment and responding to that moment as a player. And then I think Coach Wright is, I mean, even though he kind of took both sides, was a good
But at least he
middleman.
said, I feel you, but at least he said he was just ridiculously honest. And by the way, he can stay in the studio and do that job as long as he wants to. He was and he's been fantastic. But he gave you the lay of the land. He said, listen, that's a foul. It's a foul. He dislodged.
And then he said, you can be mad at it.
and you can be mad about that or whatever. But he said, I'm just telling you as a coach what you're thinking. So once he says that, he alienates about 98% of his listening audience. Right? But that's okay, because he's on there for perspective. So you don't knock the hustle. You understand what he's saying. Right? I mean, I thought, you know, Clark kind of struggled a little, but I kind of felt he landed the plane. I understand what Kenny was saying about the clock. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt on that, because I didn't love how he explained what I think he was trying to get at. And Charles, I added it to the library, watched it last night. I watched him on 60 Minutes. Charles was just Charles.
That is Charles Barkley.
I mean, that was.
He won't hold back.
No, that was Charles.
He will give his thoughts. All right, here's thought 1 for me. A foul is a foul. If a foul is a foul, where were those whistles throughout the game? That was my first thought in response to this, because this was one of the most physical games I've seen all tournament. And I loved the way the officials handled it for the most part. I thought they had a good grasp on the game. But and that's because I'm a big play on guy, right? Yeah, I like a little bit of aggression there. I like a little handsy. I don't want everything. I don't want it to be so nitpicky when it comes to, hey, we're just going to put everybody at the free throw line.
22 fouls called, right?
Right.
11 apiece.
And it's all about being a tone setter. So, like, the officials set the tone from the tip that they weren't going to blow their whistle much, and that's cool. Just don't go up and change that. That was my first thought. And then I felt that an extra 5 minutes were stolen by one call, because it wasn't very serendipitous to the moment, right? So I believed that. And then thought 2 rolled around. And I thought, what was Nembhard doing? And the reason I thought that was because he was beat, right? There were 2 things I thought of in this. First, you're beat. All game long, you've had help inside. Why try to play hero in that moment and come in from behind? More times than not, you're going to get called for coming in on somebody's back.
And you're wide open, because it was an ISO. So there's just a lot of room to see.
But my follow-up thought to that was this. Maybe because of how the game was officiated from the very beginning, he didn't want to stop playing overly aggressive defense because those touchy fouls weren't being called. It wouldn't have shocked me that if we got an inside look into the huddle like we've gotten on FS1 a couple of times this year, and we've talked about it like, oh, Coach Mack talking to his team, it wouldn't have shocked me that Coach Mack acknowledges the fact that this is going to be a hard-fought battle. So get tough, ram a body into somebody, and play tough defense. You're not expected a foul call to decide a game in a game where hardly any fouls were called. So if you're playing tough, aggressive defense like that, maybe that was the message.
You know what I can't stand? And I hate this. And I even saw it from basketball guys. So here's the deal. If you're going to get into where were these fouls earlier, first of all, I hate it. and it pisses me off because you need similar comps. Are you just talking about any old kind of foul? Or are you talking about where a guy's in his act of shooting and you get a hand on him? Because if you're not talking about like fouls,
they're talking about hand checks in those moments.
You can't listen, until you give me other comps where guys go up in the lane and guys graze, grab, don't touch, pull off, unless you give me all those cut-ups, I'm not having that conversation because we're not comparing apples to apples. I don't want every hand check perimeter foul called. But if you give me the shots where they felt like guys' shots were changed from having their hands on them. I'll look at those comps. I'm not interested in whether you're calling block charges or boxing out or anything like that when you want to make the argument, but everybody picks that low goddamn hanging fruit, and it's like, well, where were those calls all early? Give me the comps. Give me the like comps of those plays, and we can have that conversation.
Great follow-up to that point. My thought 3 was the Baylor-Shireman comparison. So there was a point in the game where Baylor-Shireman took a 3, wasn't given any room to land, and it was after the shot was taken, contact was made. It didn't affect the shot because the shot was already in the air.
So it's already not a comp.
Right, but no, here's what I'm saying here. So because of that, it reminded me of this moment because the shot went up by Trammell. And it was more of like Nembhard didn't give him any space to land. He kind of landed on top of him. And so it's not the fact that the shot went short because it would have gone short either way. He alligator armed it. But the foul came because Nembhard's follow-up contact took him to the ground.
Listen, so we were listening to Charles, right? Oh, that shot was short. That shot was short. Here's the deal. As long as that ball is in his arms, is in his hand, which it was, when you're getting the pictures of where Nembhard's
I don't like
hand
the pictures.
was.
I don't like the stills.
Stills are hard.
Yeah.
No, and listen, now that we definitely agree on. Stills are hard because you need to have it in succession. But if I'm getting a crumpled jersey, was the jersey crumpled? Okay. Was his hand on? Was the ball still in his hand?
To a degree, there was a point to where I thought the aftermath was more the foul than the actual hand.
That's
check.
fine. That's totally legit. But I wasn't so sure that was gonna be short anyway. If I didn't feel like I had to move one way or another to land.
Well, so the reason I thought it was going to be short was based on where his momentum was going.
Yeah, I know.
You would think it would go long because
why did
Nembhard's on his back.
Why did he have to go that way? And he wasn't on his back; he's on his side.
Well,
which I think is pretty important.
Right. But,
so that's why
he is moving left.
So that's why he's going. Yeah, that's why
right-handed shooter moving left.
Yes.
So you're going to fall left.
That's why he's going that way.
Right.
But are we to say that if he wasn't crowding him or with a hand that he couldn't have gone vertical? Because I don't want to make that stretch. So I don't want to take that leap of faith either.
So here's the thing. I felt he did go vertical, but I felt the arm pushed him to the side afterward. So that's why I felt you didn't give him room to land, which is why the official called the foul. If you watch the playback, and I know officials can't be like right on time, but if you watch the playback, the whistle comes when the ball's halfway in the air.
I think maybe that's what's pissing people off because it was a foul.
So I felt the contact was made after the ball was released. And here comes to my last point. My thought 4, was there contact?
See, I liken it to the inbounds play from a month ago when they called the foul on Nembhard. If you blow the whistle when you're supposed to.
I'm back. I know where you're
If you blow the whistle when you're supposed to, I don't think people are as upset.
But I think he blew the whistle at the right time.
I don't.
I think he blew the whistle on the aftermath contact.
I don't.
Because that's still a part of his shot. Even though he's coming down, you got to give him space to land. And that's where most of the contact came. So was there contact? Not was there a foul? Was there contact? I will answer that question next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Shireman has a pretty good arm, too, taking it out of bounds.
Shireman was a high school quarterback.
Right, exactly.
In Aurora, Nebraska.
If ever you want him to throw one, now's the time.
Shireman, the southpaw, tosses deep. The ball is knocked up in the air, and it's over. The officials are holding off for a moment to check the clock. Everybody wait. They've determined it's over. For the first time in school history, San Diego State is going to the Final Four. A heartbreaking loss for Creighton.
Hey, welcome back to the show, 888-638-4876. If you'd like to give your thoughts, I'll also go through some of the comments that we're seeing come across on YouTube, and then if we have any on Twitter as well. We appreciate your interaction throughout the show. It's Coffee and Cream alongside Damon Benning. I'm Andrew Rogers. And to finish up on my final thought from the previous segment, was there contact? Not was there was a foul. Not was there a foul, I should say. Was there contact? The answer is yes. Follow-up question. Anytime there's contact, DB, can a foul be called?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. Am I mad that as physical of a game as this was, that was the ultimate decider? The answer is yes. But guess what? That was rebutted by previous thoughts, right? My thought 3 on Baylor Shireman is where I landed. The Baylor Shireman comparison, I should say. And that was that the aftermath led to the foul. Not that it changed the shot, that it's because you gave him no place to land and you basically climbed the ladder of the player, which caused him to go to the ground. That's where I'm at. All said and done, it's a foul.
Yeah.
It's a foul.
So I mean, I'm just not good at this, right? Because
put yourself in SDSU shoes. If the roles were reversed, Creighton fans, would you say it was a foul?
It's a foul. Like, I don't, and to anybody, whether you're a Creighton fan or you're not a Creighton fan, I don't think anybody's saying it's not a foul.
They're mad that it was called at that point in time.
Yeah, that's what I think, right? At least that's what I've heard. But I've said this 2 trillion times, and this is coach, not coach, player, not player. Stop me if you've heard me say this before. When you get into this discussion of when to call a foul, you're not going to win the argument because you're going to lack consistency. So you have to, just my opinion, if you want to keep your heart rate down, you have to just settle on if it's a foul or not. I understand how coaches think. Coaches are like, how are you calling the game? But again, I think you still need to be more specific. How are you calling those particular plays? How are you calling ball screens? Right? Like, do you know how many times center court or high ball screens happen and guys don't come set? They never call it. If they start to call it, does that change the way games are played? Like, so I don't want to hear the whole, well, you don't call that. Listen, if you start to establish stuff like that, we don't want the game played that way. So don't have that be the reason for your treason. That's all I'm saying. Like, I get it, man. I felt like I've been cheated. I feel like I've been cheated as a coach. I feel like I've been cheated as a player. I've not liked the way things went. But man, you know how I land the plane. Mm-hmm. You're coached and you coach to not have it come down to that. And so at that point, you feel like you failed your team. And I think you feel like you failed. There's a part of you that feels like you needed to do. I guarantee you, man, Coach Mack is like, man, I could have done better in X, Y, and Z. That's what he's going.
The whole team thinks that because they all regurgitate what Coach Mack says. If you watched all post-game pressers, they all said essentially the same thing.
Listen, I know I lack objectivity when it comes to him as a person just because of the way that I feel about it. Right? But I mean, sometimes that just happens. I told somebody yesterday and Saturday, you know what? I need to find a way to remove myself from the Nebraska recruiting situation completely because I lack objectivity when it comes to my son.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I like Coach Rule entirely too much to not be telling Caleb what I want him to do. Look, I'm being 100% honest.
You know,
so if anybody else wants to go on these visits and take kids out and go to all these other places, have at it. Just report back to me because I'm just telling you, man. Like when I think I know the core of who people are, that's what I gravitate towards. That's what I want to be around. right? I just do. Why did I? This is I'm as much as I just sunshine pumped. I'll give you a similar, because I'm objective, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a similar discussion, but with the enemy. It's the same way that I feel about LeVar Woods, which is why I can't spend any time around Coach Woods, right? Like, that's the guy that I would want my kid to be around.
Yeah, you like and respect.
I don't know about I don't know everybody else over there like that, so it's a little different. I do feel like I have a good pulse of what's going on with this staff from top to bottom. So I'm like, I was talking to him Saturday. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Don't ask me anything about Nebraska, because I'm just telling you, I got 20 years of case study to pit it against. Don't do it if you don't want to hear my opinion.
I do want to hear your opinion, though.
Oh, that's later. We got
and we will get into that at a later time. We'll also get into those same recruiting thoughts with DB, because I have some questions that I'd like answered, depending on how much you can share in the next hour. We'll do that after we talk to Sam McKewon at 8 o'clock. But to continue conversation, I said we'd get to you guys. We'd read some comments. We have Brian on line one right now. Brian, good morning.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Hi, B. What's up, buddy?
Hey, I just wanted to call and talk, what you guys are talking about, Creighton call. And Damon, you are 100% right when you say people, I'll put it one better. People, you are idiotic if you say you don't call that call at that time. As an official, you are officiating the entire game.
Man.
Okay? That even counts till the fans leave the court. What I would say is this. I noticed in the game that they were letting San Diego State get away with using their arms to stop the ball handlers the first half. And then I noticed, like, midway through the second half, San Diego State start pulling it. They weren't using their hands anymore. But I noticed in that time, anytime anybody used their hands, the refs start calling the foul. And then you guys got to remember that what was bad for late in the game is that they had a little scuffle up, a little flare up of attitudes. Right then, I was like, well, the refs are about to start calling ticky-tack stuff, because you know how it gets when it got out of control. Got to rein it back in. So that was like late in the game. That kind of had a little effect on the end of the game of calls too as well. But yes, you called that call. The man had a hand on the hip. You're not allowed to put your hand on the ball handler's hip waist while they're dribbling. You are only allowed to put your hands straight up in the air according to the rules. So me saying that, I see what was going on. You call that call, okay? And if it happened to us, I want the call to go for us too. That made a call, because that is an obvious foul. So, hey, Creighton had a good season, proud of them. Wish they would have made the Final Four. I had a Gonzaga and Creighton in the final, didn't work out. But I really did enjoy the March Madness this year. Yeah. So,
hey, B.
God, you have a great day.
B, can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
Did you think real time about when to give the take foul?
I think you should have did that.
Okay.
Because let them shoot and give you a chance, in case they make it, give yourself a chance to get that rebound about like 6-7 seconds left to come back down.
You have a lot more time by not giving the take foul.
And I appreciate the call, Brian. Like I told, when I sent that text to Nick, I bet the game had only been over. It hadn't been over long. And I waited to hit send. And I prefaced the whole thing by saying, hey, man, I know it's a little fresh. There's a lot going on. But just for, before I say anything out loud, what did you think about when to give up that final foul? And that's just one of the little things that I think down the stretch. I mean, if they track down the loose ball, I don't know. There's so many things that I felt like that they could have controlled. That's where I think they lost it. That's where I think they lost it. I mean, you're going to get Bradley to score 2 points. Now let's be honest, and maybe we'll say this for 8:45 with Matt DeMarinis. But if I told you that Matt Bradley was only going to have 2 points, or Creighton was only going to make 2 threes, who's more apt to win the game? I'm pretty sure he's going to say Creighton, because they haven't always shot it well, and they found ways to win.
Now,
but when Bradley can't get any buckets, You got to feel pretty good about that as a Jays fan.
Now at the same time, we talk a lot of times when Creighton does lose games, it's because they don't shoot well. And this was one of those games.
Yeah, but you can't let a Guecka rope. You can't let a Guecka rope.
No. I mean, he started to eat with like 3 minutes left.
Hey, how about he made some big shots?
And good on him.
For a guy that's not I love it. Listen,
spirited, high intensity.
He's a fantastic kid.
He reacted the way SDSU should have reacted at the end of the game. I don't think anybody else really reacted like a rope. Like, he freaked out. Like, you made it your way to the Final Four. That's how you react.
Yeah.
Everybody else was
he's
conservative.
Just been through so much.
It was cool. You know,
lot going on.
As much as you may be hurting, it was cool to see a Guecka rope get this far.
Still
all the way there.
All over the place.
Sam McKewon's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. That kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
Welcome back. Top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio. I've been pounding my coffee from the Beanery. We appreciate their partnership. Let me take
I got to get a new reload, man.
A nice swig of the Beanery. Yeah, just all you have to do is text Boss Man. Say like, hey, the card's low. Next time I go, I'm going to have to put money out of my own pocket. So
I think I'm down to like $4.
Oh, yeah, then you need a reload because I went one time when I had $4 and I'm like, I'm good. Like, I think I could keep it under. I couldn't have been more wrong. Because then all of a sudden that day, Ashley goes, hey, can you get me a coffee too? I'm like, sure. No.
It's always a smoothie run too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for Zoe.
And Caleb
is he team smoothie?
Yeah, he bombs those things.
If you're looking for the Beanery, they have 4 locations: Gretna, Papillion, Ashland, and the new one off of 168th and Giles. We are talking to Sam McKewon to open up the 8 o'clock hour. Sam has been all over the place. His head's been in so many different baskets, but we get to land on, what do you like to call a therapeutic moment?
Yes, yep.
With Sam on a Monday.
Therapy.
Sam, good morning.
Good morning.
Sam, I thought I would talk to you over the weekend, man. You must have been pretty busy. I mean, you've got additions, you got hoops that came out, man, with the all postseason teams, man. You probably were busy.
We had our all Nebraska basketball teams, and then I was I watched a lot of Creighton basketball, and there's only so much you can do when you're on site, especially with our writers need to focus on Creighton, so I had to do a lot of the other stuff with San Diego State, and then obviously yesterday, one of the advantages of being in front of a television is you can get the conversation that the CBS guys had about the foul. That's stuff that you're not going to get at the arena because you're busy talking to the players and the coaches. So, yeah, it's been a really full 3 or 4 days with Creighton hoops. So you got to, when you're a sports editor, you got to wear a lot of hats. And so that's what I've been doing for the last, 48 to 72 hours. Spending a lot of time in that hoops world, watching a lot of basketball. I watched a lot of Final Four stuff just in case Creighton made it, so we had a pretty good idea of what they were going to face, but they fell short.
Let me ask you something real quick, and because I don't want to dominate it with Creighton just because we've had the first hour of all Creighton. But when you look at, if I just read you these numbers, right, 35, 37, 37, 38, then 4, 6, 3, 3, 3 minutes. Okay. Then I couple that with 27, 29, 31, 20, 19, 23, 16, 20, 16. How much of that do you think was a factor?
I think it was a factor in the last 10 minutes of the game. Definitely that. I think Aguica-Rope is a really good player. Aguica-Rope not having to play 37 minutes against Arthur Kaluma makes him even better. And he made 2 crucial plays down the stretch where I feel like he had more lift than Kaluma did. And he made 2 plays over Kaluma. He almost made a third. That was big stuff. I mean, those 4 points were huge.
Mm-hmm.
Creighton's legs were not entirely there in the second half. So Colfer come up short a couple times. Just point blank, I just don't know that he had quite the lift in his legs because Fred King didn't play much. And then, I at the end, I don't know. It's the very last play of the game. I'm probably in the Jay Wright camp of saying that wasn't a foul.
No, Jay Wright actually said it was a foul.
He said, what he said was that he got dislodged. He actually said that it was in the spirit of the feel of that game, the spirit of that moment, based on how physical it had been, that's not a foul that he probably thought should have been called.
I don't want to be combative because we're boys, but on 3 different occasions he said it's a foul, but I'll give you the perspective of a coach, right? So,
well,
but here's the deal, though, Sam.
I listened to it. Like what he's saying is that you can't say it isn't a foul, but the spirit of that moment is that the game had been very physical, and you could have called that foul 40 different times.
Sam, let me, and you know I'm Team Mac, but it's driving me crazy. It's absolutely driving me crazy because I just got to say this and get this out. Creighton was 10 of 11 from the foul line. They both had 11 personal fouls. Okay. Yep. San Diego State was 3 of 6 from the free throw line. They went to the foul line 3 less times, but not just that, Sam. Creighton shot 17 threes. San Diego State shot 13. If I send you the shot chart with perimeter shots taken and you look at level of aggressiveness, how did we dumb this whole thing down to spirit? Like it seems completely out of character or context to the way that the whole game went. Like, how do we surmise all of that and then say, man, I'm going to hang on the word spirit?
Well, what I would say is that if that play occurred in the normal flow of action and it wasn't an official standing there looking at it, and I mean, he had nothing else to do other than that for 4 seconds, I think that contributes to why that foul is called. If that official's moving from one side of the half court to the other, it probably doesn't get whistled. The point I'm making, though, is like, okay, so I could see where they would say it wasn't, it was or it wasn't a foul. The point is that Ryan Nembhard, on that moment, he was beat. And I think he might have been beat in part because everyone was tired. And so, Nembhard didn't stay in front of the guy. And there's, it was a neat little play the way they handled it. And I thought Trammell did a good job of creating some space for himself where he kind of arced outward and then he went downhill. And I think Nembhard may have been taken by surprise by that. But back to the minutes thing, yeah, I do think it had a factor. And I think if McDermott had to do it over again, he might have changed the way that he played that moment. When they got up 41-34, maybe somebody should have sat down for a while. And they got a 7-point lead, and you know that San Diego State's not going to score. They're not going to make a lot of shots. So there was probably a moment in there where he could have rested his guys, and it may have affected the last 5 minutes of the game. So yes, I think the minutes thing is a real thing. And it's interesting that at the beginning of the season, the question was the bench. And you listen to you watch what people do more than you listen to what they say. All season long, McDermott said that he was confident in the bench. But when it absolutely mattered, they didn't play.
Sam, one last thing here before we head over to football, something that we talked about at the beginning of the show had in reference to the seeds in the tournament. And if it's hey, can you really be saying that FAU would be a good draw because they are in the Final Four or not? And I was more on the side of, hey, I thought what's probably most disappointing to Creighton and their fans is the fact that who knows if and when the next time will be that Creighton will have as, and I said this word, so I'm going to use it again, as easy of a draw getting to the Final Four as it probably looked to be, because you went from playing a Baylor team at 3 to play a 15, to play a 5, to potentially play a 9, to play in the finals a 4 or 5. So that probably stings a little bit more, a little bit deeper than the actual loss in the moment.
I think that's fair. I think there's so much parity in college basketball now, though, that a lot of the seeds are probably closer together. And I had tweeted last night that I don't think the ACC champion, I don't really care who they are, should ever be a 5 seed. I get that, and in a small sample size of November and early December, the ACC didn't do very well.
I agree.
But at the end of the day, the ACC champion is probably not a true 5 seed. And so Miami played really well. They played up to their ability, and good for them doing that. UConn is peaking at the right time. They had a lull too during the season. So, but they certainly have all the talent in the world. And yeah, Florida Atlantic they're not a double-digit seed, but they follow the course of action that we've seen from Loyola and DCU and George Mason and did Richmond make the Final Four? No, they didn't.
No.
But there was another double-digit seed the year that VCU made it, and I can't remember who it was. They follow the course of action of those teams. This has been around now for 20 years, so this is not odd territory for any of us. It is unfortunate that Creighton probably had a great chance and they weren't able to close the deal, but you could get back there next year and you could play a number 2 seed and you could beat that team handily. You just never really, you don't know which team you're going to get on which night. Gonzaga probably could have played UConn 10 times and won 3 or 4 of them. But they, there was a couple fouls early. I think they got a little upset and then they got unfocused and then we saw what happened by the end of that game.
Sam, I obviously without being there, it's kind of hard, but you can definitely speak to big picture and philosophies. I felt like for the weekend, for the recruiting weekend, it was fantastic, right? Just to get the guys they had in, they had a whole different group. I mean, it was like they had the Polynesian connection. They had, it was unbelievable in terms of what they're trying to do to cover the gamut. Mania Brown was back. He brought a group of kids. Obviously, Dom, his influence. They're trying to get Finoti back. Tony Tata came up. It's just like I see what Nebraska's trying to do clearly. How much do you think they need to bear fruit in order to really seize momentum? Where does it go from, man, okay, here we go, to, it's a good story, right? Good try. Like, what's that degree of separation there?
Are you speaking specifically about the Polynesians?
Just the momentum early that they've got.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, there's a couple of things. This isn't going to relate at all, but I'm going to say it anyway. The first spring that Tim Miles was here, about 2 weeks after he got introduced, Jalil Okafor walked through Memorial Stadium. This was the day that they canceled the spring game because of thunderstorms, and there's Jalil Okafor. So the point being that you can get guys to come through one time. You do have to land them. And I remember writing about, I think Lee was our key writer at the time, and I remember writing about the number 1 player in the country coming and visiting Nebraska basketball. Yeah, me too. Well, he's still around,
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I know. Last time I saw him was at an Omaha walkthrough for hoops when Ball State was in town.
Yeah, I miss his writing too. That happens anyway, and so I think you do have to seize momentum. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at it, and we're going to try in the Husker Extra and the World-Herald to try to break this up into 5 or 6 different things. And obviously, one of them is,
I get it.
There's a lot of different things at play here.
Yeah.
So first of all, you've got whatever Dylan Raiola is, and he's almost his own thing. Although maybe not quite, but he's close.
Yeah.
Then you got Missouri, you got Kansas City and St. Louis. Can you get in there? Because, once upon a time, Nebraska used to do pretty well there, and that wasn't that long ago. Then you got the Texas thing, and that's flowing. They know what they're doing there. And they know how to recruit that state better than any team that isn't in Texas. And they know what they're doing. Then you got the in-state question, which your son is a part of. Like, not every kid who's from Nebraska is going to go to Nebraska. But the guys that Nebraska really wants, do they get the majority of those? And do they communicate the importance of Omaha to the kids from Omaha, so that this isn't just, well, the small town kids will go to Nebraska, but the Omaha kids don't really relate. So there's that. And then there's what you're talking about with the Polynesian relationship, which is true. In the mid to late 90s, Nebraska had a tremendous relationship with teams and coaches out in Hawaii. Now that conversation has shifted to not really Hawaii, sort of Hawaii, but not really. Now it's Utah.
Hey, spot on.
It's going to be Idaho.
Spot on.
It's going to be Utah and Idaho and California. I tweeted this last week. You know how Utah football got good? I'll tell you. They added 600,000 people in the last 10 years. They're going to add 600,000 or 700,000 people in the next 10.
I mean, I walked in, and there's like a group of 20 big, strong Polynesian guys. I was like, whoa, these guys weren't on the list. But it's coach. I mean, it's the Manaya. It's these guys are like here, and I'm like, if this ever gets going, whew, there's some big, there's some fellas.
Something. Manaya Brown for listeners. You probably have some listeners who are under 30. Manaya Brown was here. I mean, 97, 98, 99.
Yeah.
Tony Tata committed to Nebraska when I was in college. Fonoti obviously played here until I think 01. Dom played here till 2000. I can't remember. Yeah, I think 2000, 2001. So that was the time, and George Darling helped us set that up, and there were other things at play. But so there's a bunch of different things that they've got to try to do. So they got to do all those things, and then on top of that, they got to do the transfer portal, which is literally everywhere. Everywhere and anyone, and that just takes a lot of work. And Nebraska does. I'm not going to ever say Nebraska has an impossible task in recruiting. I think that's been overplayed.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely true that Nebraska is not Georgia. You don't just drive up to Atlanta where there's 30 prospects. Georgia goes up to Atlanta, they pick 10. All 30 of them want to go to Georgia, so you just pick the 10 that you really, really want. And it's, and you get those guys. Clemson gets 5 of them. Alabama gets 2. It's just not that simple for Nebraska. So they have to try to have all these irons in a fire. And I will say this, Matt Rule's not going to be perfect. We're going to talk. I think we're going to praise him a lot because I think we both appreciate what he brings to the table. He's not going to be perfect, but what he does do really well is this stuff. It's clear that he has the resources and he has the logistics to be able to hold 5 or 6 different recruiting streams all at once. And if he can hit on 3 or 4 of those with regularity, they're going to have better football players than they've had in the past.
We're talking to Sam McKewon, sports editor of the Omaha World-Herald. Toss him a follow on Twitter at SW McKewon OWH. Sam, it's all about putting the right amount of work in to keep the walls up in a house, right? If you get lazy and you don't clean the gutters, you may risk flooding. Enough work wasn't done with the previous staff, plain and simple. Whether it was recruiting or team stuff throughout the year, it just never lived up to par. After a recruiting weekend like we saw and a week of spring practice, though, you have to feel confident now that Nebraska finally has the right construction crew.
In recruiting, they definitely have it, and they're resourced right. So, I think if you go back to the Riley era, there's some guys that Riley hired that also had the right ideas. They probably didn't have as much money. Sean Eichhorst's purse wasn't quite as open. Matt Rule can get what he wants. And, that means he can take a private jet down to Kansas City and talk to coaches and be back within 3 hours. Not everybody gets that. Rule does. So on that front, yes. On the other stuff, I think we'll reserve judgment for the actual games themselves, because I think they still have to put that on the field. But yeah, I've already said that I appreciate a lot of the things that Tony White said. So I appreciate a lot of what he's about.
Well,
we'll see with the offense.
He is impressive.
Yeah, he really is. He's great.
You know who else is? I don't know. I don't want to get into this fanboy thing but I do think I know how to look at good teaching. I think you're going to like Dvorak too. So, you watch guys and how they play pullers and what the technique is and, how to diagnose a play. And what I like is you get reps, you come back, you're standing around, and you're still getting coached. Like, I can't stress how important I think that is, where even though you're not getting a rep, I call it stealing reps. It's, okay, what just happened? What was the diagnosis? And just to listen to these guys will say, hey, listen, you got two pullers. That's counter, that's trap. If we're spilling, what shoulder? Where are we at? What do we call that? How do we defeat that contact? How are we being like, it's just over and over and over again. And at some point, they'll probably still say it, but you may not have to teach it as much, right? It just becomes muscle memory. I felt like those little things are kind of impressive.
Coop does that too.
Oh, he's something else.
Same type of thing.
Coop's got a problem.
A good problem.
He can't not coach.
Right. He's a communicator. No, I think the defense again will take time. I think
I do too.
One of the reasons it'll take time is and again, this is my opinion as a beat writer, but also kind of a columnist. I think they need a little bit better. They need a little bit better players.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer that on the defensive side of the ball, yes, you certainly can create scheme. Michael Severe and I would always disagree about this. So Michael would always say, well, you can come up with a defense that kind of does this, and this, and you can hide some athletes on defense. I always disagreed and said, nope, I think on defense, if you want to be really good, you need great players. On offense, and Minnesota is proof, you can hide a quarterback and some other things with strategy and scheme and holding on to the football that gets you home. What you really need are elite athletes on defense. And I kind of wrote about this for the Monday Rewind, which is now online this morning. Luke Reimer definitely is that player. I would be curious because I think this is something you understand better than I do. Who on that defense right now, not here, not coming, but right now, fits into that quick twitch, gonna go make a play the way Ernest Hausman made that play at Michigan kind of thing?
I'll give you two, Reimer and Hartzog.
Yeah, well, those are the two. And God bless both of them. One of them you got to strain to keep healthy because he's a little undersized, and that's Reimer. He's going to walk out of every season banged up.
Newsom's a stud too.
Yeah, he is. I'll give that's fair. But and Hartzog's a little undersized too. And I'm not trying to knock undersized that because some of the best players Nebraska's ever had, Amir Abdullah or Baron Miles, they weren't
Mike Brown
huge. Mike Brown, right? But man, what you didn't name was an edge rusher, and maybe that maybe we'll see Chief Borders become that. I don't know, but you need somebody in that front group who's gonna do that, and so I don't know if they have those players yet.
Sam, you're the man. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We will talk again next week.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Sam. I'll give you three. Jamari Butler's a stud, and I'll give you two young guys.
Next.
Yeah, 55 and 91.
And I have a question for you because all of that talk and Sam's last response had me thinking of one thing, and you're the best man to answer it. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Another great conversation with Sam McKewon. If you missed it, you'll have to go back and listen to the podcast when that gets released on Hail Varsity Radio's page, and you can do so after you listen to the full show, because that's how we do it. It's Damon Benning and Andrew Rogers here for Coffee and Cream in the morning, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Going into the break, DB, you had two guys on the brain in regards to edge rushers. Who are they?
Yeah, so the only reason I didn't say him is because he said right now. But I'll give you one that's right now, and I'll give you two that are on the come. Jamari Butler's right now.
And we've been hearing his name a lot.
Way good. And he has been way good.
Right there.
So I don't have any problems putting Jamari Butler in that discussion. And I think it's early, but I think Nebraska has a pair. And Umamielen. We just call him Prince.
I actually wrote down Prince Will on my finger here. No joke.
And Cam Leonard.
Another good one.
But
both guys that made my list for the Super Six, the Schaefer rankings.
Yeah, both. I mean, they flash.
Because I said they're interchangeable because I liked how they could be utilized on any part of the defense. And I thought actually Leonard could line up on the inside and be good if he puts on weight.
He's a little bigger, stronger guy. Prince is
he's more edge.
And long arms, really good levers. I mean, I liked a couple of those guys. Maverick Noonan getting a ton of good reps. It's going to take some time because they're not as dynamic, I think, as they'd like to be. But they have some good individual pieces. So I like Butler. I like Princewell, and I like Cam. Different body types from Cam and Princewell, but both guys that can get after it.
You know, I had this thought over the weekend because I saw Chris Brooks Jr. pop up on, I don't know if it was just a photo with Wisconsin or he's having a pretty good spring or whatever it is. But it had me thinking, and you would be a great person to answer this question.
Maybe.
How much does it hurt seeing Nebraska legacies in the headlines of other teams or just rival teams? Because I see Husker Nation having that. It almost hits deeper with the fan base over anything else. Seeing guys that either are legacies or come from the state thriving at other institutions. Not to say that they're not happy for the player, but they're more upset that Nebraska couldn't make do with that.
Yeah.
And so maybe that question can't be answered, but do you ever get that same feeling that people seem like taken back or hurt by the fact that a Nebraska legacy is thriving? Because then it falls into your own household if Caleb chooses not to go to Nebraska. Like if and when we see him succeed, those feelings are going to spark again. And maybe it's just a constant snowball effect because you can't get everybody.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just because, we hear it all the time because we're here. So it resonates a little bit louder. Like if somebody else is playing well at another institution or the potential to play well at another institution. I think a lot of it is just Nebraska people wanting to cheer for Nebraska people, so it hits a little bit different. I don't know if it's Nebraska nice. I don't know if it's the salt of the earth thing. I don't know if it's that Midwest mentality, but because what I don't like, and I see this a lot, it's a lot easier in basketball and in baseball, and even to some degree, as you look at like a Glock out at SC, in volleyball, those fan bases, wrestling, we've seen a lot of good wrestlers get out of the state. Not so much lately, but I mean, it's happened. He had 3 studs in the last 4 years leave the state. But we don't really cheer for our guys once they leave either, right? It just does not typically go well once football guys go to another state. Unlike, I don't get the vitriol and the venom in other sports when they're succeeding other places. It's certainly not basketball. I mean, people are cheering for Hunter. They were cheering for Saint. I mean, it was, what's going on at Stanford.
Maybe it's a Big Ten thing though, right? Because how many?
Maybe
there are a lot of people that I would say cheer for Chucky, but at the same time are still mad that Chucky didn't choose.
Yeah,
Nebraska.
and I can't relate. So I'm just the opposite. I would cheer for the person and not the conference. Right. I would cheer for Isaac Trout or Hunter or Saint or whomever way before I would be like, oh, Chucky's in the Big Ten. Because in the Big Ten, I only want one team to do well. And care what sport it is. I don't cheer for the conference as a whole. And I know some people think that's weird. Some people ride with me on that, but I don't cheer for the conference as a whole.
Yeah, you cheer for Nebraska
or Nebraska kids. That's it.
Plain and simple.
Yeah, like, I'm gonna cheer my brains out for Keegan at K-State. Right? I just think football's different. We're not as forgiving.
I think that also comes with maturity too, because you just start cheering for players at the end of the day more than or paired up well with your team. Because even if I take it one step further and I think MLB here, like there are players that I really like to cheer for, but of course I'm a Cardinal fan. But I loved Javi Baez when he was a Cub. I thought he was one of the most passionate players playing on the field. I loved his swagger out there. That was a fan of mine.
One of the least liked players in all of baseball.
And you either love him or you hate him, right?
Yeah, I'm much closer to the latter.
Right, and I love the fact that he was always so fired up out there on the field. But just because he played for the Cubs doesn't mean that I didn't like him.
Hey, can I ask you this real quick? Are you concerned about Flaherty?
Yes. I am, because his velo's down, his inning count is down, and I also
he was walking people yesterday while they were playing softball.
Command is an issue.
I think what he finished with 3 or 4 walks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was getting 6 earned. What'd they end up scoring? It was in the 20s.
2, yeah.
I think it was 24-1.
Yeah, something like that.
He just hasn't.
Jack Attack just hasn't been good since his injury.
Yeah.
He had he blossomed fast, quickly. He had a lot of hype coming in as well, but the Cardinals have always treated him like he's Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Jacob deGrom. They've treated him as if he's one of the best in baseball, and so did the rest of the country when he was healthy in his early goings. We all treated him like a top 20 pitcher, but since, I mean, he's trending downward faster than Adam Wainwright's velo is trending downward. Now, going back to football here, though, DB, because you were at Nebraska this weekend with Caleb, and I had a lot of recruiting questions, and I know this short segment, we'll do this again at 9:30 after we talk to Brady Oltmans, or maybe around 9:15, and we'll continue that conversation. But you've been a part of a lot of these. And I guess my question to you is, because it's a new staff, what was different for you? Like, what about recruiting weekend was ultimately different, or was it kind of the same?
It seemed a lot more personable. So it's strange, right? Because I felt like going in, it wasn't as organized as I maybe would have liked.
Which shocks me, because we've been talking about how organization has been the theme of the first week of spring.
Yeah, I mean, like an itinerary, where to be, what time, where are we going to start? Like, I didn't get that until Friday, right? Which is rare. Like, I could tell you about the next 6 unofficials, right? But let me say this, because this is interesting, and I should have asked the staff. So for all the things that they're doing better, or that's too strong of a word,
different,
where they're making strides where they need to, where they've needed to make strides in the past, right? The on the field, the development, the attention to detail in recruiting, or not recruiting, but like at practice. I felt like that part of the organization of recruiting is not as good right now. But 2 things. Number one, I think they're in the process of hiring about 15 more staff. And number 2, I don't know if it fits their personality, right? You want to be organized, and hey, you're going to be here at 11 and here. But you know where I think this staff is best? On the fly with real relationships. So I think it kind of goes against what their real personalities are, even though on the surface it looks advantageous. So I think there's probably some give and take there.
I think that plays into the fact, too, that he's like, hey, come visit anytime.
Exactly.
Matt DeMarinis next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
I like Creighton in the game.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I like Creighton in the game. I think Creighton's probably one of the best teams, if not the best team, body movement and ball movement. And they're great offensively. I like Creighton.
Welcome back to the show, 888-638-4876. If you'd like to get involved in any point, it's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, and we continue our conversation on yesterday afternoon. I keep saying last night. The game was at 1, which was by far great move.
Most of my guys got back by 7.
Great move by the NCAA to have that at 1 on a Sunday. Oh, I was for it.
113.
Didn't have to worry about anything going late into the night. I got to start watching college basketball at a good point in the afternoon. Good on them. Unfortunate result, and we bring in Matt DeMarinis to talk about just that. Matt, good morning.
Thought we were about to get a Coffee and Cream After Dark episode on that last segment, boys. Asking DV about rooting for guys out of state that leave the state.
Yeah, you've noticed that, right, Maddie? It's different in hoops than it is in other sports than it is in football. Like we didn't even rally around Max Duggan, and I thought we could have.
Yeah, it definitely is noticeable here, but you know where I notice it the most too, and where it gets kind of nasty for me. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit different being a Midwest kid, but as Creighton's been in the Big East, you follow Big East reporters and media to try to get the gauge of their team. And when players leave the teams they cover, it gets nasty. Like years later.
Well, I saw
they take so many jabs at guys who like jump in and are all about that program at one point, and then they just make a decision for whatever reason to go somewhere else. I don't know. Maybe I'm just different, but I feel like those relationships don't end with the tenure at whatever team you cover. So maybe I'm just wired differently, but it's nasty work in the Big East for sure. So I notice it there for sure.
Did you see were you surprised that Ed Cooley wasn't treated? I'm sure there's some things he could have done differently out the door, but man, they got over Ed Cooley in about 60 seconds.
They nixed him.
I got a new perspective on Providence these days after seeing the way they've been responding to that. I mean, they've got rumors flying that like that they're not buying any of the reasons he left. There's like a real nasty rumor going around that they're all just buying lockstep and enjoy. Like, oh man, that's a bad look.
I'm team Kim English though. Go Kim English.
We'll see. I don't know.
He better work out because those people are bloodthirsty right now. He better be good.
Hey, Matt, where do you land with everything that kind of took place last? Like, where's your head at right now? Is it, hey, great season, they got as far or close to as far as what people predicted them to get to? Is it, I'm still salty about how things ended up? Where are you kind of sitting with everything from yesterday's game?
It's the best season in school history. There's not there's probably going to be a bitter pill because of the ending. Because I think, and I don't know if DU would agree with this because he played for some national championship caliber squads, but like when you're in a game like that, I think the most athletes that I've talked to over the last decade plus would say, I'd rather get like 30 pieced and like know for sure that I wasn't good enough on that day than have it come down to that, because you're going to always want, with an athlete's mindset, they're not going to think about the call. You know what they're going to think about? They're going to think about every single play they want back that would have prevented the situation that ended up occurring at the end of the game. Like Nembhard doesn't want the foul back. He probably wants a layup or a three or a decision off a ball screen. Like that's the part that's going to be hard for them to compartmentalize. I think the athlete's mindset is I'd rather just get dog walked and have it be definitive than have it be something like that where I wish I could have a play or two back to change the result.
Great point.
That's the best 40 seconds right there. That right there will
be the snippet of today's show.
But I'm it's not just because I agree with it. I like the perspective because you're such a diehard, but then you can pull yourself out of it and think about how other people think, like from their perspective, which is mainly why I like talking to you, right? Because I'm just going to get some sort of multi-level perspective, but that is 1,000% true.
And I haven't heard that take yet.
How many times do you think Coach Mack has replayed when to utilize that take foul? I'm talking about little stuff like that. Like you can get into the call, but maybe Mack is like, gosh, if we use the take foul with 4 seconds left, or we let him shoot it or whatever. Right. I mean, there's lots of little things that happen in that last 2 minutes that I think real competitors would want to take back other than the call.
For sure. 100%. That's what they're going to talk about all summer, because whoever decides to come back, they're going to use obviously that last game as fuel. And maybe the last 1.2 seconds is the thing that's going to stick in their mind in terms of the frustration that they use on a daily basis when they're feeling a little bit tired and they need that extra motivation. But what's going to fuel them is the details that probably put them in that situation in the first place. And that's what's going to put them through the summer workouts, the fall camp, and get them primed and ready for next season.
I just had a moment, right? Because you used the word details. I can't tell you how many times in the last 12 years and being around Alvin watching a practice, does he say with ball screens, get to the top shoulder. And I'm thinking if I'm Ryan Nembhard and I'm looking at the initial play that ISO defensively, it's like, man, if I give me another, foot, and I'm probably in better position, right? I mean, just the little things that happen in basketball.
Yeah, it's a game of inches for basketball for sure, because when you see the details as they're worked out, when they are implementing everything on a daily basis, you truly get a feel for how it affects the play, like the ripple effect that like setting the ball screen at this depth, making sure the guard rubs off at this spot, making sure your read is on time, making sure the pass is delivered in the shot pocket, not just in the general area of the player. Like so much of that stuff makes a huge difference. And when you play a one possession game, it's magnified.
How much does that pregame speech from Kyle Korver from the Sweet 16 game actually resonate with the team right now? Because I thought he had some really good stuff in there about, hey, go capture the moment. But at the same time, like, hey, if it doesn't go your way, what is this going to fuel you to do in the offseason? It's going to make you want it more. It's going to make you, get into the gym right away, hit the weight room, whatever it is. How do you think a loss like this will become a good response for Creighton next year?
Potentially, but there's also, I push back on that a little bit to some degree, and I think we've experienced it now with in covering two teams in particular. One, the 2016 Creighton volleyball team went to the Elite Eight with probably ahead of schedule, right? They had a superstar sophomore class. And then the Final Four, I think, was in Kansas City in 2017. They wanted to host. They wanted to put themselves in position to make that next step run, right? Same thing with the Jim Flannery's team this last year. They made the Elite Eight a year ahead of schedule, a sophomore-laden core, if you will, brought back 6-year top 7 scorers, had all the hype, had a great season, and then that's the thing about the NCAA tournament is like you get 40 minutes, you get 5 sets. It's fleeting. So to think that, oh man, you're right there, the Elite Eight, like that's got to fuel you because you're that close to the Final Four. You're not that close to the Final Four again. You got to start from scratch. You got to win your first round, second round. You got to get your breaks. You got to get the luck. So to that degree, the ending is a little bit. I don't want to say irrelevant, but it's not 1-to-1. I think the goal is like you want to reach the step further, but it can't be how it defines your legacy. I think the thing that Korver's point, first of all, that man can rip off a motivational speech like that. He's really, really good with that. For that to be off the cuff. And by the way, how cool was it that it was his kid's first game? It's just really neat too. Spitting image, by the way. I think the thing that resonates is you have a chance to make history here. So just, go take the moment, go seize the moment. Don't live with regret in the performance. And if you make it happen, you make it happen. If you don't, you're going home in the Elite Eight and you're still leaving a spot that no one's ever reached before. And that's kind of the prevailing thing with this Creighton team is they've made, I know from talking to a lot of players over the last few days, they've made a lot of people really proud that they put that jersey on. And I think they have a lasting legacy now, whatever their next step is and however soon it comes, that whether they use it for fuel to make a Final Four run or deeper next year is not as important as what they gave the former players that have walked through that gym this last 2 weeks.
Matty, let me get you out on this just because you're a philosoph. You don't have to give me specific players, but what kind of player or type of players are fueled by yesterday's ending to want to come back for another season? Like, what do you think some of those individual personality traits are?
Well, I think, if they're comfortable in their own skin, number one, because I think if you come back next year and you say it's like, and you actually open up and say it's unfinished business, like we don't like the taste of how that ended and we want more, you're going to put a humongous target on your back. So number one, you have to deal with the pressure that comes with stating flatly that you believe that's not where it should have ended. And that's going to create the expectations we saw this year. I think the thing that is most impressive about this group is going to tie into next year for whoever returns. Because that group, it's not like they stuck their chests out and said Final Four national championship. It's how casual they said it. That's the, you know what I mean? They just like I'm thinking Trey Alexander and Ryan Nembhard, they were just like leaning forward, like all chill, like we want to go to the Final Four and win a national championship. We want to do something that never been done here at Creighton before. They didn't like come out and say we're going to. They said, yeah, that's just what we play for. That's why I talked to Ryan Nembhard when he committed. for his commitment story. And in that piece, he says, I'm going to Creighton to win a national championship. And I was like, and I stopped. I was like, well, no one's ever won a national championship at Creighton before, so why are you coming to Creighton for that? He goes, well, then we're going to be the first to do it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how they're wired, you know?
That's neat.
So
That's cool.
If you're a winner, if you're a competitor, if you're a dog, like, the next step is always going to fuel you, no matter what it is. So if they had lost in the second round, that Sweet 16 would be the one. Like, it just, the next step is what fuels them. They want the Big East championship in New York. They want the regular season title. They want the Final Four. They want the national championship. That's just how they're wired. They're winners. They've always won. They know how to compete to that level to get a championship, and that's what they want. So that's what's going to fuel them going forward.
Matt, excellent stuff. Man. We appreciate you hopping on this morning, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure, gentlemen. Anytime you want.
Thanks, Matty.
That is Matt DeMarinis. Coming up next, Brady Oltmans here on Coffee and Cream.
Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Before we get to our next guest, I'd like to take a moment and tell you about Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's is your one-stop shop for all your car needs. Shane, did you get your taillight fixed yet?
I have not, but I every time I hear the read here, I get more convinced that I need to go to Dingman's.
Well, I just don't know why you're not there yet.
I'll be there in an hour and about 20 minutes.
To pick up Caleb's car.
To drop off. Well, it's already dropped off. I dropped it off last night. they're starting this morning. They just sent me a text looking for the key fob so they can start working because they're ahead of schedule.
Let me know what program you give back to whenever you're there, because they have that awesome give back program for every car repaired.
I can give you a couple that I'm fond of. I'd probably start with the Open Door Mission, or I would maybe look at North Star.
Both good ones. Both really good ones. Yeah. And that's one of the things I love most about Dingman's is that give back program. Plus, they're a family-owned, family-run local business, and anytime you really dive deep into the family businesses, you have those diamonds in the rough, like the give back program. So if you have any problems with your car, go to Dingman's Collision Center. I have a problem that needs fixing, and maybe Brady Oltmans can help answer some questions now. Brady, good morning.
Morning, fellas. How we doing?
I don't really know if I have a problem that needs fixing. I was just trying to transition to get to you.
Brady, what's up, buddy?
Oh, we're still thawing out from yesterday's snowfall, but we're doing all right.
Well, where was that?
I was a little more than I thought, but how about just to the west? I mean, they got like 5, 6, 7 inches.
I mean, we went from a beautiful recruiting weekend to snow on Sunday.
Although it was chilly, there was a lot of hat passing on Saturday, Brady, with like the little toques and the snow hats and people borrowing coats. They were outside a good chunk of the time. It was that sun was an illusion.
Yeah. I get it. I left that Western Nebraska stuff for a reason, though. You know what I mean? Like, I came here to get away from that. I don't need it here.
It's interesting. I was explaining to Andrew earlier for all the things that, Nebraska has done well getting off on the right foot as a staff, especially with recruiting and stuff. I felt like it was a little unorganized is too strong of a word. But we didn't get the itinerary until like Friday. And actually it was Coach Rule who said, hey, just meet me early. Just bring him to my office. I'll meet you at 8. Practice will start at 9. Then I got my itinerary later on. And I was thinking about it. I was like, well, it's probably not just me, right? There's they had some guys down there. And I got to thinking, Brady, maybe even though that's like what we're accustomed to, kind of having everything mapped out by the hour, this is what you're doing. Maybe that's counterintuitive to like what the staff likes because they're so good in like just the normal day-to-day that they don't give the rigor of a schedule time just because of their personalities. Like if you want to stop in and say hi, they'll take care of you. If you don't want to stop in and say hi, they won't take care of you. Like they're ready on demand. How much of that do you think I should probably get used to?
Well, it's interesting because they are, especially the administrative staff, there's so many different personalities to them, but they all are here because they all believe in Matt Rule. They all like working with Coach Rule. They all kind of believe in the same mindset. I thought, like as you're kind of saying, the mixed match of the not sending out the itinerary until later. One thing that they really wanted to do was build that family atmosphere with, the players, especially the guys that they didn't get in right away. And I don't know about you guys, but like when I come back for family Thanksgiving, you tell somebody to be there at 11, you don't see them until quarter after 12. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's just a little bit different beast. Obviously, there are multiple ways you can do it. You can schedule out the itinerary, tell them to be at 8 a.m. sharp, or tell them to be this, this, there, and where, and then have everything regimented down, 5-minute increments. But you could also just kind of be like, hey, we're family. As long as we get the stuff done, we'll kind of take you through things. You don't have to be here at set 9. We'll work with you on everything and see where kind of things go from there. So that was at least my kind of impression of how it would have been thought about.
And how much of that do you think also had to do with not only because I think you're right. I think it plays to their personality, those personality strengths, like working outside the box, but that it was so free flowing with guys coming and going on a Tuesday or a Thursday.
On a Tuesday.
You're in on a Friday. You're leaving Saturday morning. Like they had to be flexible.
Yeah, well, and shoot, they had some 30-some guys in for the big weekend, and then you had a couple of recruits come in early. I mean, Jaden Riddell from Raymore was in early, And, he and even Jaden Doss coming in from, kind of helping take pictures with him a little bit as teammates. Those are kind of the interesting things that I think this coaching staff wants to do. Obviously, the weekend was the big attraction, but overall, they want to just open up the doors to everybody and say, hey, come take a look, see if it's for you. They want to open it to coaches, recruits, former players, people just kind of tangential to the program, just to see like, hey, this is how the new era is going to be. This is how things are. And then you saw it when Eric Crouch and Johnny Rogers were invited to practice, other former Huskers, not just Heisman winners. And even Dominique Raiola, coming in with his son, they brought him in and he hung out with Trev for a little bit. They just tried to build up that kind of familial spirit within the football program. And I think that kind of works to the open door policy that they're working with.
Keep it with family, because recruiting reactions from this past weekend were highly centered around how the fan base made them feel. And it's kind of like, that bigger family outside of just the team family when recruits are in town. How much does that swing the pendulum in Nebraska's direction? And obviously a small piece to it all and what their relationship with the staff and team are supersede what I just said, but it has to have some impact. I mean, do you think with how passionate the fan base is and, what could come with NIL dollars potentially that, it could swing Nebraska's direction more than maybe another program?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I was kind of there at Friday night and talking with a couple of friends and other media members and saying, like, you're kind of rolling the dice, because some of these guys might not be baseball or softball fans and they might just kind of be bored hanging out. But, you kind of look at them and see the way that they interact with people kind of really sets the tone. If you're going to be a Nebraska football player, you are considered like, a professional athlete in a lot of people's eyes, and it's in the state of Nebraska. The baseball and softball thing and building up the big greater Nebraska athletics community is something that I don't imagine a lot of other schools deal with, or a lot of other schools use, on the recruiting trail and invite people out to build that up. That kind of makes Nebraska stand out a little bit more. And I know from kind of recruit reactions, it was like a very unique experience that's going to stick with a lot of these kids and say, like, that was interesting. And then the autographs and taking selfies with, younger kids and adults kind of helps them stand out. And it works towards like with the NIL stuff, a rule has said we don't, if a kid's going to come in with his hand out or asking about NIL in the first 10 minutes, we kind of know, like, that's not really the kind of kid we want in here. That's not the big pitch. But if you're going to play at Nebraska, if you're going to be a big football player here, that is going to put you up, on a platform. That's going to give you a bigger audience than a lot of other schools will. And then that's going to open up the door, to advertising and marketing opportunities through NIL. So all of that kind of works together. But at the fundamental level, it is just like, it's saying this is what Nebraska can be. And then, on top of that, we're going to win games. Why don't you come be a part of it, kind of thing.
It's interesting you say that, because I think it's kind of the wedding theory, right? Where the ceremony is good and you'll go through your vows and you want to make sure all of that's gravy, but people remember the food and how they felt post wedding, right?
And the DJ.
And I feel like, well, that's part of it. And I feel like with the recruiting weekend, while regimen and the photos and all that's fun, I think ultimately at the end of the day, what you're describing is, well, how did it make me feel? Like how did the people make me feel? Not necessarily what did I do?
Yeah. I mean, it just looked like, and it looked like a lot of those guys were having fun. They were taking pictures, and I don't know how many other programs you're going to have go out to that school's baseball game or their softball game that same night and have that kind of treatment about them. You know what I mean? Like, it's truly a unique experience. And then obviously it helps when you have the ominous red glow of Memorial Stadium hanging out over center field at Haymarket Park. I mean, there's always going to be that little reminder of, oh, by the way, you're going to play football. And like, that's like the linchpin that everything within here kind of gravitates around. So it is kind of how to make them feel good. And as I've kind of always thought, you don't really rely on commitments after a weekend like that. You make them feel good and say, there's something about that place, and have them come back. And if they want to come back for the spring game, they see the fans and everything. And then if they don't make a commitment yet, or if they've kind of put it off until the fall, bring them in for a game day atmosphere. And then that's where kind of you make your money that way.
How big do you think it was, if we're just looking at out-of-state guys here and what the impact of a player like Dylan Raiola can do or can be for a program? How big do you think it was having him in town again for a visit like this during spring, to where he could bring other 5-stars along with him, just because whether they're friends of his or they just want to be a part of what he's a part of?
Yeah, because I don't know how much of it is of I'm going to go wherever Dylan Raiola goes kind of thing. Like I'm locked in. Like, I don't think that there's a whole lot of that, but I think to a certain extent, there's a lot of, well, if it's good enough for him and if he likes it, maybe I should check it out. Like, maybe that could be good enough for me kind of thing. And then they come in and they see the facilities, they see the people, they see the fan reaction, they see all of, the fundamental building blocks that we all know to gravitate around Husker football. And then they say, oh, what's going on here? And then they see the Heisman winners come in. They see the way that the former Huskers come in and be like, hey, man, I played here 25 years ago, and I'm still people still stop me for photos, and they love it here kind of thing. And then they talk to Coach Rule and they talk to the staff, and they get a sense of here's the new direction, or here's the avenues that they want to go down. And then I think that leads into, obviously they want to get Dylan Raiola, the top overall recruit coming in your building is the priority, right? Like, you just don't have that very often. But I think that just kind of widens your scope and says, like, we want to make sure we get our kids, but now the net has been cast far greater than it had been before, and they can get those kind of 5-star, high 4-star talents to come in. And regardless of what Raiola's situation is or wherever he goes, you've made a strong impression with those kids that say, okay, like, I'd love to play with Dylan Raiola, but even if he doesn't come, I'm committed because I believe in that. And he kind of opened the door for that.
Brady, let me ask you something, because the closer I get to all this stuff, and now I actually the last couple of years have gotten a chance to like pick the brains of like parents and recruits. Let me ask you something. You're watching this machine kind of unfold, and they pushed all the right buttons so far. But when you're going after high-end talent and you're comparing and contrasting, is there something you think Nebraska can do to offset, or what are ways that they can offset that some of the like company they're competing with are actually winning? Is there something Nebraska can do or take advantage of in the short term until they're actually winning?
I think the offset to that is the belief of building something or rebuilding something. Because I've always kind of thought the similar way of like, how do you compete if a program hasn't made a bowl game in 6 years? How do you compete on the recruiting trail and compete for a scholarship that Georgia or another perennial playoff team does? And I think it varies by athlete and varies by recruit, because some of them kind of approach them, in very unique ways. They are individual people. They have their own, philosophies and everything. But I think there's something to be said about, they come into Memorial Stadium, they see the plaques, they see the numbers, attached to the walls and everything, the championships, the trophies, all of that. And they say like, okay, so this place has been something. So that means it can be something again. And then you get former players in that say, yeah, this was special. This was like family to me. I'm still treated great from this place. And then they see the highlight reels and they see the fans that still, fill the stadiums, because who doesn't, if they're performing at a college football venue like that, who doesn't want to be cheered? Who doesn't want, ravenous fans to support them and chant their name? That's what they're looking for. And then they get a head coach that says, yeah, all of that, we're going to bring that back, and we're going to steer it back to a winning ways, because these people are craving a winner. You see them packing that stadium every Saturday this last fall, and they haven't seen a bowl game in 6 years. You're telling me that they aren't salivating for a 10-win season, the possibility of winning a conference championship, getting back to the win? They've done it before. We're going to do it now kind of thing. And I think a lot of these recruits are like, hey, like, I'm in, and I feel welcome. I feel valued. I feel a part of that. I talk to these new players who like this new coach who just got in there, hasn't coached them in a game yet, but they're still riding with him. They still speak highly of him. I think that's the overwhelming feeling that a lot of these recruits that could potentially commit to Nebraska, that's what they're feeling, going in through this recruiting period.
We're talking to Brady Oltmans, Nebraska football and recruiting reporter for Hail Varsity, at Brady Oltmans on Twitter. Brady, last thing here, and it's something that I thought about when Quentin Newsom said it in his presser last week about how single-digit jerseys went away, and it's something to strive for. And you talk about the relationships these players have with the coaches. It's a new tradition. It's a real Matt Rule tradition if we really sit back and think about it, because it's such a Matt Rule thing to do, to bring that over from what he did at Temple and other stops. And other coaches do it too. But just to be able to do that in his first year here, it seems like it's totally up Matt Rule's alley. But again, he puts it in the hands of the athlete now to go earn it. How important is a move like that? And where will this team, do you think, see the most benefit from it?
Well, I'm of the personal belief where I don't know if that move matters as much as the player's reaction to that move. I mean, you got a not first-time head coach, but he's new to Nebraska. I mean, he's a proven winner. He just came from the NFL, a retread, but albeit some very successful high school or college coaches have been NFL retreads. So you've got a guy like Quentin Newsom who's played for the same position coach for 4 years. I mean, he's a legitimate NFL prospect next year, and he's coming back to Nebraska, and a new head coach comes in and tells him he's going to take his number 6 away. Like, that could end poorly. Realistically, that could end poorly. Yeah. and Quentin just says, no, they did that. That's the thing they do. And I don't know what I got to do to earn it for mat drills or anything, but I'm going to get my 6 back,
I can't. That is hilarious, because we're kind of like, so there's two things in this, and I'm just listening to Brady and I'm laughing because at least he's on. You're giving like kind of the honest assessment of like, wait a minute, numbers. First of all, numbers are a big deal. Let's not act like they're not. If not, Shedeur Sanders wouldn't have been given number 2 while everybody else is having to earn theirs at Colorado. But number 2, it's a cool idea. And it's great. Hey, I get to go earn it until you may not get your number. That's a whole nother something that you're going to have to deal with after that too. I'm lockstep with you there, B. Like it sounds cool now, but man, give me my number.
Yeah. But if the players are bought in, if the players are cool with that, you know what I mean? Like that means that they're bought in right away to this coaching staff and their beliefs, and they're willing to put their numbers on the line for it. I think that kind of speaks highly of how this coaching staff is viewed by the players.
Brady, you are always full of great stuff. We appreciate your time this morning, and we will talk again next week.
All right, guys. We'll see you then.
Thanks, B.
That's Brady Oltmans again, Nebraska football and recruiting reporter for Hail Varsity. Going back to, because I keep wanting to pick your brain, man. Like I'm getting like updates on my phone, and I'm texting back and forth with some people.
Ask him this, ask him that. What do people? What?
It's not even just that. It's more like somebody says something, and I'm like, huh. Well, I don't really have the answer, but like maybe DB has the answer.
What are we talking about?
The big thing for me was this, because as we were talking with Brady, family is a big thing with this staff, and we were talking earlier about how it may have seemed a little disorganized at first, but that was
So let me I'm used to having an itinerary.
Right.
I did not have an itinerary. I did not feel like the day was disorganized.
Not to say different isn't good.
Right?
Like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you
It's
there.
just like, man, I just want to know where to be. And it took the coach. When he's like, hey, what time? And I was like, oh, that's funny. I've been asking. I don't even know. Right? And he's like, hey, come at 8. Just bring him to my office. And even as I'm walking in, guy's my witness. He's like, hey, I'm in the players' lounge grabbing breakfast. Just come here. Like, it's just like whatever.
He treats it casually.
It's just, but I'm telling you, I think it's because of the whole, it was Brady that just said it, right? Like the whole family thing and the schedule. If I ask my mom, hey, what time do you want me to be there? Like, if she really wants me there, she's not hard-lining me. She probably knows I'm not going to make it right then anyway.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, hey, we just love to have you. So I think, the rigor of a schedule is pit against their personality traits. Like, we're going to love you regardless. You come when you feel like getting loved, right? Like, that's kind of, I think those things are at play. And as I mentioned, that and the fact you're probably adding 20 more staff.
Well, how much do you want to be sold as a player? Like, if you ever gotten a phone call, right, and somebody's on the other line of the phone, and say it's some type of stockbroker, DB, you have to get in on the ground floor right now, blah, 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 here's X, Y, and Z. Does that ever make you want to say yes? No. Like, whenever you hear that? No, because you feel like you're going to get screwed in the end. So you almost have to applaud the approach, because he's not trying to be a salesman. He's not trying to sell you on this brand new leather couch when you walk into a furniture store when you're looking for a bed. Like, you're just not going, you know what you want. You're going to go see it. You know your price range. You know what you're going to get. And that's that. The salesman's not going to influence you to do more things, because that's at least the feeling you want to get out of it. And I almost like that fact more, because if I'm a recruit and I'm walking in, and I'm not speaking for Caleb or anybody else, I like the fact that it's, hey, I'm not going to try to like sell you again for the 400th time why you should be playing football at Nebraska. I just hope you have a good time.
I'm just picking the brains of these guys, Gradney or some of these guys. Obviously, I'm having breakfast with Dom or these guys, or even if I'm like just talking to, like, let's say Crouch, right? And we're just watching and we're talking and we're interacting, and sometimes, recruits would come over, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes they would stand close to a drill, sometimes they wouldn't. I always wonder, like, what is the freedom to just kind of be who you are? Like, how impactful is that versus you have to do it like this, that, and the other? Because I don't really know, right? Because, if a couple of the DB, if a couple of guys, like if Caleb and Gradney or somebody wanted to go watch a drill, or Boganowski, right? Whose dad went to Bellevue West, right? Like, if they want to go watch a drill together, like, they could. And if they're over there, coaches they respond accordingly. There's some give and take about the ability to do something because you're allowed to, versus the ability to go and do something because you're told to. There's something more freeing about it being part of the day-to-day because you can, versus I'm directing you to go do it.
Who's in control?
Like, that's kind of the balance. It was like a great Jedi mind trick. But I'm just telling you, man, it's like you walk in and you see these guys that bring like a quarter of their team. I'm like, whoa, these guys are really wanting to see what's going on down here.
What it's about. Yeah. As you said, players want to be led, but at the same time, they like their freedom.
Yeah. Balance.
More on this next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
DB.
Andrew.
I don't know if something has more personal injury right now than your piece of paper.
Yeah, you like that? That
looks
thing
like
is,
you just found like a treasure map.
You know where I thought I was gonna get personal injury? Somebody had to like come and swoop me up off the sidelines because I was talking to a former guy, Mark Trainowitz. He used to coach my indoor team in Lincoln, and we were just going back and forth. And he wanted to meet some people, and like I had to get swooped out of a drill because I didn't see it coming. And I was like, dang, too bad I'm not at work because could have been a workers' comp claim. But I know if I needed a case, I'm hitting up Dyer Law, man. Put your trust in a team at Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and you get the settlement you deserve. You can call the Dyer Law team at 402. That's 393-7529, or visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your workers' comp claim. That's the thing, right? We've been talking about this. Trust. Trusted team to put your faith in to handle your business, especially on a workers' comp claim. That's Dyer.law.
And trust when it comes to this coaching staff, because when they bring players in, especially this weekend, you have to have trust that they're going to treat you like every other player. Like that was a big thing we were talking about. A huge point was, hey, they're bringing in Raiola, they're bringing in a bunch of other 5 stars, a handful of 4 stars. Are they going to treat me like Mike Dillon? Like, am I going to get the same like window of opportunity to talk with these coaches? Did you sense that? Did these players all get not even time? Because I don't want this to be oh wait, it's all fair. Like not even time, but enough time.
Yeah, I felt like it was way cool. You know, I can't speak for everybody, but I mean, I know when we were supposed to be there, you know, there was nobody else with us in the office at 8:10, right? So I felt like if he's like, "Hey, come to my office," or "Hey, come to the players' lounge," we'll go back to my office or whatever. Like those 20 minutes or 30 minutes before we go walk out and actually get checked in. I mean, that was like 3 hours worth of time, right? And I can tell, like you just know, right? You know how somebody makes you feel. You know how they make people close to you feel. And, they've made up a significant amount of ground. And I'm going to tell you the X factor. And it's weird because he's not over the top in terms of his personal skills. Tony White is a dude.
He's my guy.
You do like because he was good to you on a humbug, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just in public.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and I got the sense that he would be good to me in any setting, which I tested the theory last week when I went to practice.
He's legit.
So
it's easy to gravitate towards your head coach and what could potentially be your position coach. So I know he likes Super Coop. He's messing with him during a couple drills and stuff like that, and Rule. But Rule or Coach White hasn't been over the top with him. I just think they have some similarities in terms of how they think. Certainly how they talk. I mean, he talks like a football head, right? You hear run fits or weak side or, who's backside B gap or stuff like that.
It's a great piece of audio too from the press conference.
Dude, I'm such a voyeur type dude, like not like super kink or anything, but I mean, like I like to watch. So they have these rotation stations and they're tackling, right? And they're going through a couple things. I mean, Coach Rule has got his sleeves rolled up, but it's Coop's drill, right? They're broken down in like 3 drills. D-line coach has their guys and they all rotate. So there's different body types in each drill, right? I'm watching Coach White watch the instruction of Cooper during 2 of the tackling drills because I think he wants to see his guys.
Is this what you said on Saturday or what you saw on Thursday? Because I saw that on Thursday.
Saturday.
So he did the same thing Thursday with Coop on the sideline, one-on-one with the guys. They were just going through a normal tackling drill. And White did the Matt Rule. He oversaw what Coop was doing just to see it. And then he would acknowledge the positive rep.
Or whatever, right?
Right, or the negative rep.
So do you know immediately what, and I'm so weird because that's about when I got bus rolled, right? Because we just kept hearing same foot, same shoulder, and it's almost to a T what we teach and it was virtually the same drill. So we're like all in. But I get caught up watching what his reaction was going to be. Because I was trying to get a sense, does he like it? Does he not like it? But then you know what I landed on? You know what I think he's still trying to figure out? God is my witness. What's the first thing we talked about with Coach White when he got the job? Where would he be? Where? What would he do?
What position group that he's going to land at?
So I think right now he's looking to see what he likes, who needs help, who needs an extra set of eyes, who needs another teacher. Wow, if we got this secondary on lock, do I need to be back here with the secondary? Like, what are my linebackers doing? Do I need to be with second level? Do I need to be with D-line? Like, I think because he did get to bring 3 of his guys over, right? So I'm thinking he's still figuring out where he needs to be. So he's overseeing everything. But the coaching instruction on the side, no, and I'm not. Listen, I've said this 2 trillion times. I'd rather be right than well liked. So I'm not going to tell you anything I think just you want to hear. The instruction out of a rep or not during a rep is where That's real development. That's how they're making hay. And
Mhm.
you just kept getting it.
And that's why I think you really gravitated to Dvorak, because that's what he does.
Oh, man.
And he does it so well. I remember watching that on Thursday too. It was, hey, even if whether it was Reimer or Sherman or a freshman that came in, whoever it was, and I'm not just trying to bring defensive players up, but everybody was cycling that day. But no matter what, the status of the player, starter, non-starter, if they didn't do something right, Dvorak would let the drill continue, even though he's running the drill with the whistle.
It's always a great debate, right? Coaching on the fly, letting it happen, and coaching on the side or catching it in film. We've gone through this for 20 years of covering this team, and all staffs are different, right? You got some coaches that just want to fire off reps. Hey, we'll catch it in film, and there's something to be said for that. You get some guys that kind of stop and want to coach through and make sure you don't repeat it, and there's something to that. There's guys that do the rep, and they trust other people in the staff to, hey, go coach them up. Like there's multiple ways to skin a cat. It all boils down to where you can steal the most reps.
See it, change it. Yeah. That's the best type of coaching, in my opinion. When you see it, you change it. We saw it last week with Barthel in the running back drill with AJ Allen.
He's a monster.
We saw it. I can't remember who the coach was, but when MJ Sherman was doing a blocking drill and he didn't do the rep perfectly, stop, MJ, watch how it's done. You push up, then you come and cut through, right? And then make them do it again. When you see it, you address it. That is the time to do it. You don't want to wait, let them keep doing the drill over and over, whether it's incorrectly or, 80% instead of 100%.
I watched the same. So 4 guys, because this stuck out to me. First of all, Bullock was everything I thought he was, as is Isaac Gifford. We forget about Isaac Gifford. Don't sleep on Isaac Gifford. He ran by me, and I said something slick to him. And this dude, punched me in my sternum. Right? Kind of laughing. He's like, pow! I was like, man, this look. What? Oh.
And then you swung back.
He was already off into the next drill, right? But I watched him talk to Kapai, Noonan, Ruquan Buckley, and Luke Reimer. And by him, I'm talking about Coach Dvorak, using the same language. All different positions, too. But the same thing that he was trying to accomplish in the drill. And I'm like, you know what? See, that's teaching. That's teaching. We just had a staff meeting 3 weeks ago. Remember I told you I had to be at Westside at 4:15? Do you know what the whole meeting was about? Common language. Hey, we're going to use this. We're not going to use this. We're going to use this. We're not going to use this. And we came up with, hey, is everybody good? Is everybody good with the common language? Do you know how that warms my heart? I'm like, because you can't have shared vision.
Right, without common language.
Without common language. Because it builds in what? If you get this right, I'm leaving. What does common language automatically build in? I'm going to say accountability.
Dang.
Automatically builds in accountability.
Great stuff.
You can coach each
on
other.
The recruiting weekend. Awesome work there.
It's a long weekend.
Thanks for bringing it here. Probably still a lot to uncover, but we have the sports cleanup next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and things you wanted us to get to from the weekend. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Clean up on aisle 6.
It's the Coffee and Cream Sports Cleanup on Hail Varsity Radio.
Lots to discuss from last weekend. A lot on the diamond that we didn't get to.
We got the Flaherty.
Yeah, we did. We did get the Flaherty.
Flamerly. Man.
Flamelessly. I'll tell you what, though. We were talking during the break at one point, and my heart goes out to Creighton fans because I would react like them in that moment if it had something to do with the Cardinals, the Blues, the Bears, whoever like my professional sports team is. I have reacted like that before, so I get it. I'm with you. I mean, I totally get it.
Can I bring up something about that since we're in the sports cleanup? And in case you said something about it earlier, I apologize because I might have been answering the phone or something like that. But I just want to know, and I'll go back and look at it. I just want to know at what point when the foul happened did he become dislodged? Was it when he moved his head? What was the point? Because that was the first thing that I thought of. Was like where? Because that's what they were talking about. What exact point? What was the tall tale point? I mean, just offhand. What are they looking for when they do that? Is it like?
I think does it change? Does it
the trajectory change?
That's code for does it change does it impact the shot?
Yeah.
And by the way, I got to go back and you know what I'm going home to do this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back to listen to the Jay Wright clip because I love Sam, but that's not what I got out of it. I mean,
And everybody takes something away differently.
Yeah, but he put a period after it.
Yeah, he did.
That was a foul. Period. So where did the other stuff come in?
Yeah, well, that's why I said at the very beginning he was kind of Switzerland, right? He was on one side, he was on the other.
But he did say now. He said now the other perspective is if you're a coach. Like I'm like, am I crazy? Is Sam messing with me?
No, I heard that part too.
He said it multiple times.
It was such a good conversation.
That was pretty good.
No, Shane, I still land where I land. Like, in regards to the dislodge, it was not giving him a place to land. It was essentially, if you take a floater shot, say even Kalkbrenner was jumping to try to block that shot, and the floater got over his hand. It was the fact that if he had a hand check on him the whole time and then tried to jump and do it, he landed on him. He didn't give him a place to land.
Can I say one other thing about that whole sequence that we saw yesterday?
Yeah.
Is there, and I'm just looking at it towards the crowd that was there, the fans that were inside the arena. There's got to be some kind of a way that they can tell you what happened at the end there instead of just like it's over?
No.
I mean, at least we got it.
You don't get explanations.
It was absurd how that game ended. Absurd.
I mean, at least we got it in the post game. I felt bad for the people there that didn't get it until they got, were on Twitter or whatever.
It's a valid point to feel bad for them because I
feel
bad for me too at home because I felt the same way.
So and it's weird for me. It's like I was saying off air. At least I think this is off air. The one team I'm not like that about, even though it's my team, is Nebraska.
Because I asked you that. I said, hey, if you watch Nebraska lose to Alabama on a play like the Super Bowl ending call, like we talked about,
Texas,
for days
Nebraska.
afterward, would that affect you like it affected Creighton? And you brought up Texas, Nebraska.
And I was just like, no. Nebraska is the one school, and I'm not as passionate about let's say North Carolina basketball and Nebraska football is not the same thing.
It's because you played for Nebraska.
So which has taught me, or I've been taught to not be like that.
Not react like that.
Yeah. And plus a lot of it is my job. I mean, do people when I'll tell you I'm in my feelings and this is just my opinion, I'm going to say this is just my opinion. I'm in my feelings because it's Nebraska. And Lord knows I've had some meltdowns over Nebraska. Right. But those are opinion pieces. When I'm trying, if it's officiating, if it's something other than how I really feel, then I try to be a little more measured in my approach because I just know how I once felt, how I used to feel, how I've matured. But with Nebraska, I've only been able to handle chaos one way. I was only allowed to handle when things didn't go my way one way. So every time Nebraska comes up and it doesn't go the way that I want it to, it's been ingrained in me to only handle it one way. And that is control what you can control. Now, has it gotten harder for me now that I'm not playing or coaching it? Sure. But when I think Nebraska, I still always think, okay, now what was I told about this? I mean, you think I can't relate to Creighton fan yesterday? Oh, we didn't sleep for 4 days after FSU. Didn't sleep for 4 days. I mean, literally felt like it wasn't one call late. It was multiple calls throughout the game. And you're trying to cover for a teammate that had missed a kick and you don't want him to spiral. But all we kept hearing, hey, you know what? It's all we could ask for. We had a chance to win it at the end. It's all we could ask for. We had a chance to win it at the end. It's all we could ask for. We had a chance to win it at the end. And all I could think of was it shouldn't have even come down to this, coach. Why do you want us to handle it like this? And the only person that really sounded off was Trev. His post game. He used the word cheated. But, I mean, he's about to go to the league and get paid, so he can do what he wants to do.
Fair.
And he just played his ass off with a $6 million man, right. Steve Rogers elbow. But That's why I just don't get like that over Nebraska.
Hey, speaking of Nebraska, Big Ten opening weekend for Nebraska baseball. It was cool to see 3 former Huskers have their jerseys retired on Friday.
Two of my real-time favorites.
Alex Gordon?
No, one I grew into. I played with Hurrdat, so he's like creme de la creme for me, right? Know him well. Like, I believe in a lot of things he does. Komine was like my dude that I love to watch pitch. Little guy, great mechanics. I liked the way that I liked his arm. I just liked his mechanics.
Right.
And he always got the ball in big games. I grew.
And you like guys like that. I mean, you love guys like that.
I grew to love Alex Gordon. I naturally loved Komine and Hurrdat because Alex is so much younger than me.
And did you grow to love him too because of his success in the major leagues? Like, did that help?
It was more Kansas City related than it was Nebraska. Because
but the tie came back to Nebraska.
Yeah, and I was so busy, man. I mean, you're thinking 01 to 04.
Well, yeah, you were.
There's a lot of other things going on, so I didn't have a chance to like get in,
right?
You know, but we hung out one night in particular in Indianapolis during Big Ten championship game, and he was about as good a dude as I'd ever spent time around 1,000 other people in a crowded sports bar. I mean, AG was the man. So a heck of a night.
Hey, also I liked Jace Kaminska's performance in game 2, despite how much he struggled with command in that game. Going back to why you really love good pitchers because of mechanics. He's somebody that can win more when things are going wrong than a lot of other players in the Big Ten. Because when things didn't go right, I mean, that's why he's 5-0, right? He's able to battle through that adversity, and that's what I really like about him. Plus, I also thought Shanneman had a good weekend.
Yeah. And so who's Shanneman in your opinion? Right? Are we sure? Because this guy looked like
of old.
This look like Vandy Shanneman. Not midweek, couple weeks ago, Shanneman.
Yeah, he looked like he found it this weekend, but I'm not jumping on that train just yet because as much as we waited on poor pitching to work itself out from the very first series, I'm not going to buy right into good pitching until I see it consistently.
Yeah, because then who's going to start on Sundays?
Oh man. That's tough to answer. I mean, what are they 1-4 now on Sunday games?
And dug themselves a pretty deep hole too.
Nebraska softball swept Purdue. Courtney Wallace had a couple of good outings. I don't want to say she had great because she did kind of get lit up in game 1, but bounced back in game 2. Yeah, very much so. Moving over to Creighton baseball, they split with Minnesota this weekend. Ryan Wyndham took a perfect game into the 7th inning, which was pretty sick, pretty fun to watch. I'd like to take Brady Counsell in Chambers so I can give him a piece of my mind for breaking that up. But that's beside the point.
For the love of the game. What do you say? Ruin it?
Yes. Omaha softball did the job against St. Thomas. Cameron Myers is stud. I know I say her name a lot.
Once a week.
9 strikeouts against Creighton last Wednesday, and then 15 on the Saturday doubleheader in game 1. She is an absolute beast. And then to close it all out, Omaha baseball split with the defending league champ on Saturday. They did lose the series. But man, one point of emphasis here, pitching is there for this team. It's got to get, the offense has got to come. And also in game 3, Harrison Creeling, I mean, this is a guy that's always been clutch replacing a starting pitcher, and he went 5 innings and did well.
So if they could score about 6, they're going to need 6-7 runs.
Because their starting pitching gives up about 3, maybe
fine.
4.
They'll be fine.
They'll figure it out. Thanks for joining us today. A lot more to get to this week. We will catch you again tomorrow.